Well, thank you very much, Eddie, and thank you, everybody, for that welcome. It just shows I shouldn't have opened my big mouth. I'm very grateful to all the theme coordinators, though, for summing up, because I think what it leaves me to do is perhaps take some of these ideas that we've been hearing about yesterday and today, and to take Val's idea from this morning, to take them from our primate brains deep down into the mammalian brain and hopefully a bit further into the reptilian. If I can achieve that, I'll be pleased. Right. We all have biases. I'll admit mine straight away. Eddie has indicated a little bit of them. Most of my geographical background has been in sub-Saharan Africa. Most of my subject background has been in rural water. But we're trying to cover the whole sector. We're looking geographically into Asia and the Pacific. We're looking at sanitation. We're looking at urban slums, the urban poor, and we're looking at hygiene. Val, I've mentioned hygiene in my second slide. I hope you're pleased. In addition to that, we've had the 4 conference themes, which I think, despite segmenting the conference, have really helped to pull things together. I don't think an obsession with sustainability does represent a bias, though. For us all to want everybody on the planet to have a reliable water supply 24/7 and 365 days a year and for the whole of their life, and a clean toilet and a clean environment for life, and to have habitual practices of hygiene, these things do not represent an obsession. They are what we're all about. And we need to get in place the physical facilities, the institutional arrangements, the management, the financial resources, all the behaviours, and these behaviours go beyond hygiene, I would argue, to make all that happen. You've seen this graph in a slightly different form from Clarissa yesterday morning in her keynote. The snapshot functionality as estimated for 20 countries in Africa of hand pumps, rural hand pumps. I showed this to some students in Cambridge a few weeks ago and just asked them what do they make, not so much of the variation between countries, but of the average figure, the 63% functioning, 30-odd% not. 2 students successively stood up. One said, "Oh, that's not bad." And another said, "That's not good enough." And they're both right, in my view. I think these figures do represent quite a remarkable testament to the achievements of community management over the years. The fact that the functionality rates are that high. But nevertheless, it is absolutely right that such low functionality rates are not acceptable. So it's a case of a glass half full, a glass half empty. There are both sides of the coin. This is another data set which you may have seen. It's in the WaterAid Sustainability Framework and some other publications from our Tanzania country programme, showing for 6 districts in Tanzania the way in which functionality deteriorates over time. I was conducting an interview the other day with Sandy Cairncross at the London School of Hygiene, one of the gurus in water and sanitation, and he made this comment referring to this data, suggesting that the half-life of a water point in sub-Saharan Africa is about 15 years, and that doesn't represent sustainability. I cannot agree with him more. If we neglect sustainability, we do so at our peril. It's logical that as coverage increases, the balance of expenditure has to switch from investment in new services to the maintenance of the services which already exist. And if that gradual changeover doesn't take place, then what we're going to see is that coverage will not increase, because systems will be going out of use as quickly as they're coming in. Moreover, poor functionality in the sector will give us an increasingly bad name that may threaten and undermine the investment that's available in our sector, and most importantly of all, those who we aim to serve, the poor in rural and urban environments, will continue to remain unserved. So sustainability is absolutely fundamental. I would argue that unless a service is sustainable, lasting, permanent, then we cannot really refer to it as a service. People return at some point to the swamp for their water, to the bush for defecation, and they abandon hygiene habits which they may have learned. And we've all seen these sort of situations where people are using contaminated surface water or defunct water points to gather their water supply, or where pit latrines are filling up and not being emptied or replaced. I wouldn't want to use that latrine. I don't think you would either. Val, I'm very sorry. I don't have a picture of somebody not practicing good hygiene, but I think we can all imagine what that looks like. The good news is that sustainability is on the agenda. I think, in some respects, the tide turned with the publication by Tom Scouten and Patrick Moriarty on community water, community management, which started to make explicit some of the problems with community management. Eric Baumann at SCAT then picked that up a little later and talked about community management plus, arguing that community management alone is not enough. And I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. There are a number of influential organisations and initiatives which are taking up the sustainability challenge and driving it forward. Some of them are listed there. Forgive me if your organisation is doing that and you're not there. It's not meant to be an exclusive list. This conference, too, is a key moment, I think, in highlighting the importance of sustainability. There's another conference later in the year, in November, in Kampala, the Rural Water Supply Network, which will again be focusing on sustainability and hopefully on positive messages, positive experiences in which sustainability is actually achieved. But we've got to maintain this groundswell of change. So what do we mean by sustainability? Two things initially. Services which continue to work over time. We don't need to make it any more complicated than that. We don't need complex academic sounding definitions. Len Abrams came up with that form of words some years ago, and I think they're difficult to better. We want behaviours which become habitual. And it's not just hygiene behaviours, but also behaviours in relation to sanitation, the usage, the cleanliness of latrines. It's behaviours in relation to water too. The attitude and the action which results in people being willing to pay for water or water services. So I think three aspects follow from that. The time dimension, and I don't hesitate to use the word permanent, because if we're not talking about permanent services, what are we about? We need to talk about service, and this is something that the Triple S project in particular has emphasised rightly. It's not to do with the assets, it's not to do with the management arrangements. They can change, they can evolve. The water must flow. The facility for excreta disposal must remain in some form. And it seems to me that there are really three key aspects which somehow combine the four themes of this conference. One is around the users, their behaviours, their social interactions, and the institutions that people form. The second is the money, and the third is the environment that provides our water, but also which we pollute at our peril with poor sanitation or the lack of sanitation. I think you're all familiar with the normal hierarchy of goals of any kind of project or program. Outputs, the easy bits, the direct, the short-term results of investments. And that's really what we've been focused on, it seems to me, for so long now. We stress the importance of capital expenditure. We emphasize numbers of taps and toilets and boreholes and hand pumps and people served. The MDGs, I think, encourage that. Going up to the next level of outcomes, again, it's difficult to find a better way of assessing outcome than the way that the World Health Organization minimum evaluation procedure, now 30 years old, did in asking, does the system work and is it used? Is it functional? Is it utilized? And really what we're about here is the use of water, the quantity of water used, the purposes to which it's put, the cleanliness of toilets, the behaviours practiced in good hygiene. Those are the outcomes. And that focuses us on recurrent expenditures to ensure that those things happen, on the management arrangements that are necessary, on user behaviour, and the wider operating environment. At the next level of impact, it seems to me that the key thing here is that impacts on health, socioeconomic benefits, impacts on livelihoods can follow, but only if those outcomes are achieved, only if services are functioning and used. And they may not follow immediately. It may be that we need to see other changes in people's lives and livelihoods and environments before the health benefits and all the other benefits are fully achieved. And to me that says don't let's get too diverted with measuring impact. I would rather we put much more emphasis on the measurement and the determination of outcomes and ensuring that they happen. I struggle to think what is the right metaphor, the right image or picture of sustainability. I like pictures. In the past I've used the metaphor of a chain. There are a number of different factors. Maybe the themes that we've used this week, the institutional aspect, the financial, the environmental, and so on. A chain emphasizes that all the links are equally important, and if one breaks, the chain breaks. A rope gives a slightly different emphasis. If one strand breaks or frays, there's still some strength in the rope. But it seems to me that not all aspects are equal. And in the case of a motor car, a nice Audi there, or any other car for that matter, if the fuel system and the electrics are not working, you don't go anywhere. But if the lights are broken, if the wipers have failed and the springs in the seats are a bit poking through the upholstery, that doesn't really matter. You can still go from A to B. So there are killer factors, and there are those that merely weaken the vehicle, or in our case, sustainability of service. It seems to me that at the core and at the local level, or the level at which the service is enjoyed, there are 5 or 6 sort of core essentials. First of all, demand, real demand for the service. Secondly, water security in the case of water. Thirdly, local management arrangements. Fourthly, recurrent finance to keep the system running. And fifthly, importantly, external support.